All right, everybody, and welcome back to Project M.O.V.E. Today we're going to kind of go into a little bit about the happy chemicals of working out and all the cognitive benefits that we get from them. Maybe also kind of discuss a little bit about possibly not treating, but helping out with maybe some clinical diagnoses like depression, anxiety, and just how exercise can help us along with that. But we're going to kind of do it with a little twist because we all kind of heard about this, this runner's high, and that's not really new. Yeah, we'll explain it a little bit more, but we're also going to kind of combine it with sunlight and how sunlight plays effect and kind of balancing out our hormones. And we talked about that into much more detail in a prior podcast, but we're going to show how it kind of has a synergistic effect
Right.
as far as kind of regulating our mood.
Correct. Yeah, the hormones are really, from the light perspective, light is kind of where they start. So it makes sense to kind of combine with the movement.
Yeah. All right. So first up on the list, norepinephrine.
Yep.
So norepinephrine kind of like sharpens our attention, increases focus, and kind of has an effect on our stress resilience. Kind of think of it as like your mental spark plug.
That's a good way of thinking of it.
Yeah,
I like
and with this, you kind of also want to how we can kind of improve norepinephrine. We kind of want to, if I'm not mistaken, we want to kind of get some early morning sunlight with that, and more specifically blue light.
Yeah, so that early morning kind of frequency, if you will. So the interesting thing about the sun, like we think of it as like one thing, but think of each time of day or the big times a day, they're going to kind of be a little bit more in one direction versus another. And so that early morning is where we're going to see that nice spike in blue light, in addition to the red and infrared. But that's kind of the key component to help start that process of creating the right kind of recipe for the chemical, if you will.
Yeah, and if you want to kind of maybe think about this as a kind of how we developed in our biological process, when we start a day, we need to kind of get moving and kind of start becoming more active and really get motivated to kind of tackle the day and essentially get everything as we need to do, find our food, feed our families. So we need to have kind of that energetic spark early in the day to kind of get us going.
Yeah, there needs to be a motivation to kind of start your day.
Yeah, so, and as we've kind of talked about before, that blue light kind of sparks, it gives us a natural increase in our cortisol levels. And cortisol is kind of what mobilizes energy. It's the hormone that mobilizes energy and kind of gets us going. And that's why we want to typically avoid blue light later in the day.
Yeah, so if you think of blue light in general, it's our activation signal. And so if our goal is to get up and start to either gather, hunt, whatever, that blue light spike early in the morning is kind of our activation signal, if you will.
Yeah. So yeah, we're trying to get moving. Along with that, we also want to think about the other chemical that's going to be right there with it is going to be dopamine. Dopamine is kind of our motivation, our drive, and kind of like our reward hormone or neurotransmitter. And also with that, the same thing as before, we want to typically kind of helps work along with that is that kind of that blue light, that early morning sunlight.
Yeah, I would say that the norepinephrine and dopamine, they're obviously different, but as far as like the light signal, they're activating in a similar fashion. So while we're getting the motivation to kind of start our day, dopamine kind of reinforces that as well.
Yeah. Okay, kind of moving down the list, we're going to go into more details as far as how exercise fits into that and how we can kind of help boost certain chemicals. So next on the list is kind of serotonin and your endocannabinoids, and those are kind of where we want to kind of couple them more with our midday middle of the day sunlight.
Right.
Serotonin is going to be kind of our mood stabilizer, kind of regulates anxiety, and it really kind of sets the tone for our sleep much later in the day.
Yes. So we need, serotonin is, made in the gut. A lot of it is, but also it's activated through the exposure of sunlight to the skin. So the key is, so this midday is now where we're going to see higher amounts of UV light. So if you look at serotonin's like absorption spectra, it's kind of in that UV range. So it doesn't mean that it can't be activated at other times of the day, but if we're trying to kind of optimize with the light signal, with the pathways that we're trying to kind of shoot for, that UV light signature that kind of represents the middle of the day is where we're going to see that best utilized.
Yeah. Yeah, because like in the middle of the day, we're kind of just looking to kind of hold steady and really kind of stay productive. To kind of get as, I guess, just from an evolutionary standpoint, to kind of just get as much accomplished as possible. And along with that is also going to be your endocannabinoids, which is going to be kind of more this calming sensation and really helps us kind of get into that flow state where we kind of time just kind of flies by, and if we're trying to accomplish a task, it's just going to kind of let us settle into that and really kind of find our groove.
Yeah. So if you think of that, if you've ever done a task and you're like, oh wow, time flies, right? Like you're activating this pathway, so you're able to kind of really hone in on whatever it is that you're trying to do, and everything else just kind of disappears for a second or maybe an hour, depending on how long you're actually doing it. But yeah, it allows us to kind of, while the others are kind of like creating that energy spike, this is now kind of locking us in and allowing us to kind of stick with it for a little while.
Yeah. And we got two more for you. So kind of now moving in later in the day where we're kind of winding down, we have our endorphins and our BDNF, our brain-derived neurotropic factor.
Yep.
Endorphins are kind of like our natural opioids.
Correct.
It kind of creates this kind of euphoria, kind of also kind of it lifts up our mood, but it kind of also kind of blunts like kind of mental and like physical stresses we experience. So we don't kind of necessarily kind of experience the pain of what we had to go through that day, if you want to look at it that way, but really kind of gives us more of a kind of like a positive outlook on our accomplishments for the day.
Yeah, and you think of it as like a natural like stress reduction or natural kind of like, it's not necessarily calming, but it kind of minimizes the discomfort, if you will, and allows us to kind of keep going without having that that irritation or aggravation, if you will.
Yeah, and typically, I guess in the evening time, we typically see more warmer, kind of amber color light in the day.
Yeah, so this is going to be a little bit more towards that red and infrared. You're going to have much less of a blue spike. So we're going to see a little bit of a difference, similar to that early morning, but obviously we're now kind of shifting towards the end of the day. But we're going to see that that red part of the spectrum start to be emphasized.
Yeah, because we're eventually heading to sleep shortly after that. And by cutting out, whenever we have blue light and cortisol, it's like that and melatonin kind of work opposite each other. So if our cortisol levels are high, our melatonin's going to be low. So as the day goes on, we're looking to naturally let our melatonin rate, rise as our cortisol's dropping off to kind of allow us to kind of aid in sleep and all those other recoveries.
Right, and so that's the reason why minimizing, blue light after dark, screen time, those types of things, just bright overhead lights. So another little like hack. So if you after the sun goes down, like if you had a lamp or something like low to the ground, that's going to be better than an overhead light because it represents what we would have more in the natural environment. So long story short, minimizing blue light after dark will decrease the melatonin disruption. And so if we can decrease melatonin disruption, we can get to sleep faster and stay asleep longer.
Yeah, I've with both my kids have these set, like we live in a kind of like smaller house. All the rooms are close to each other. It's really old. Things are noisy, but we put their sound machines and lights, their night lights, essentially on the floor, and even as far as like keeping it in that warmer color zone, just to kind of prevent any as minimal as possible.
Yeah, and there's like an evolutionary reason. So like different eye receptors, if you will. So whenever you see the sun coming up, that obviously represents morning, and so it's representing certain chemicals in the eye or pathways in the eye. And then same thing at night. So by having your lights low on the floor, you're kind of mimicking that as well. So
Yeah. And then then also your BDNF, your brain derived neurotropic factor. This is kind of like our
think of it as like fertilizer. Like it helps to kind of like grow new neural pathways.
yeah. So it's kind of like where it kind of really helps with like creating more neuroplasticity and allowing our body to then kind of make the changes that we develop from that day. It kind of helps allow us to solidify it and kind of learn from our previous task.
Yeah. So if you think of like motor learning, so say you're learning a new lift or a new version of a lift. If you get a good night's sleep, you're going to consolidate that much better than if you had a disrupted night's sleep. So by using these chemicals, we can then optimize our performance that we see in the gym, or if you're, if you had a golf lesson that day, or that doesn't matter what it is, you're going to be able to better utilize what you learned earlier in the day, and that could be schoolwork or whatnot. So
yeah, kind of early morning, we're looking kind of to help mobilize ourselves. With that, we get norepinephrine, dopamine. That middle day, we're kind of looking kind of hold steady and kind of have a nice consistent mood and just kind of stay kind of grinding. For that, we're looking to we're looking at serotonin and your endocannabinoids. And then finally, to reward ourselves for that hard day of work, we're looking for more, more warmer light in the evening. But then also, along with that, we have that our endorphins and our brain BDNF.
Yeah. So I think the take home is like we're going to talk about the movement piece, but matching the light signature to the desired outcome is going to give you the best overall outcome, because you wouldn't want bright blue light at night or in the evening, which is going to counteract some of these chemicals. So if you are going to do the type of activity that we were going to suggest to maximize one of these components, but then counteracting it with the wrong light signature, it's like you might be creating benefit, but you're also then going to take away. So we just want to maximize our results, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so movement, how we can kind of optimize those mobilization chemicals early in the day. That norepinephrine and dopamine then also kind of helps set our cortisol rhythm, because our hormones kind of follow our natural circadian rhythm, and if we can kind of keep consistency and having a more of a rhythm in our movement and light structure, we can really just kind of optimize.
Well, think of if you showed up to work 2 hours late consistently or somewhat consistently, do you think you'd be able to keep your job? Probably not. So same thing goes with our hormones, right? So there are multiple ways to set the rhythm, but light is our strongest signal to set the rhythm. And so our hormones are designed to be released at certain times throughout the day, and there's fluctuations. And then we have these, like you said, if melatonin is high, cortisol is going to be low. If cortisol is high, melatonin, so we have these natural opposites, right? And so if if you wake up at say 8 o'clock, but the sun came up at 6 o'clock, you're 2 hours behind. And so while your body will still produce hormones and it'll still kind of happen, it's just not going to be the best or strongest signal as what it could be. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to kind of time our day with the light signal, and then now with the movement that kind of best corresponds with those particular types of chemicals.
Yeah, and I know it's gonna seem kind of difficult, but like our biology developed however many thousands of years ago
Yeah.
uh, to dealing with like, well, we woke up when the morning sun came up. We didn't have these artificial lights in, so we're now living in a world our biology wasn't really kind of developed for.
Yeah.
So we kind of have to kind of go look back and kind of take this perspective of what it is we were trying to accomplish, thousands of years ago.
Yeah. So you can look at it this a couple of different ways, but unfortunately, indoor environments allow us to break nature's rules. So we have air conditioning, we have heating, so we're not really feeling the temperature that's outside. And then we have artificial light environments. So technically, you could stay up all night or whatever. So it completely disrupts our internal system. And we now start to see like part of the chronic disease that we're trying to kind of fight against is linked to these disrupted rhythms. And so the more we can sync our daily routines with these rhythms, the less downstream negative effects that we'll tend to see.
Yes. Okay, so morning, we're looking to activate and motivate. So, like I said, we're trying to increase our norepinephrine and dopamine to kind of help get us going and get us get it as whatever it is that we need done in the day to kind of get it done.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do we kind of specifically target norepinephrine from a exercise standpoint?
Yeah, so I think that this is going to be, I think, more like we can just start with like a nice walk, right? We don't have to do like super vigorous activity. This would just be where you're able to kind of kill two birds with one stone. You can get your morning sunlight while you go for a nice kind of, it doesn't need to be like super slow, but super like just a nice brisk walk would be kind of a good way to kind of start the day.
Yeah, so you're also kind of getting that early morning sunlight, that blue light, along with just kind of getting our body moving, kind of getting it activated.
Yeah, and I think that the other thing that maybe I didn't say, the brightness matters. So people don't realize how much brighter it is outside than it is inside. So like there's a general number of 10,000 lux, and that's just a measure of brightness. So outside is always going to be brighter than inside. And so that brightness is also the stimulus for that norepinephrine release, not just the fact that we're getting the blue light spike. So that's another signal, if you will, is the brightness.
Yeah, and so kind of getting that light activity in the morning kind of helps us produce more cortisol.
Yep.
And then that coupled with that blue light, everything is just kind of working synergistically together. So just light activity to kind of start our day, kind of gets us activated. Now, how do we get motivated? That's where dopamine comes in.
Yeah, and so that's going to be a little bit more rhythmic. So this could be where something like cycling, if you were into like dancing or like almost like a movement flow type thing. Like if you were going to do kind of like a kin stretch class, but more of the flow versus, static type things. So this would be where, you might go for a light jog and then come back and do something a little bit more along the lines of that movement flow, if you will.
Yeah, kind of like more of like a goal oriented type of thing. So
Yep.
It's like you kind of have like a task, and this is kind of where the rhythm is. It's like by kind of going through these steps and having this task exercise plan, and by completing it, and it's actually better to probably start something that's definitely more attainable, so we kind of get that we can check off those boxes, and by checking off those boxes we get this reward feedback with dopamine.
Yeah, so that's actually a really good point. So attaining the goal. So, sometimes we might strive to set, oh, well, I'm going to try and do this. You might not, but we actually want something that we can check the box, right?
Yes, if anything, set the bar low, because then once we hit those check marks, we can actually raise our goal, and we actually kind of like almost like raise that threshold, and we get even more positive feedback.
Yeah, so, dopamine is kind of the molecule of more. It kind of motivates us to keep going. So if you can celebrate kind of those small victories, and you can attach dopamine to maybe not the quote unquote end result, but the little parts along the way. Um, this is one of the things that, people that do like ultra endurance, it's like, how do you motivate yourself to do 200 miles? Well, you motivate yourself to take one more step, so you've got to just gradually chew the distance over time rather than, oh, I'm going to just do 200 miles. So if we can attach dopamine to those little small victories, then we can start to stack that into some bigger, more grandiose, if you will, larger goal.
Yeah, and also things like even lifting can actually kind of give us that dopamine spike. It kind of want to be more in this kind of uh, progressive overload, in the sense that you're normally, I'm not a big fan of uh, kind of going based off of weight and reps. But if we're trying to optimize for dopamine, like keeping obviously time under tension and intensity like in perspective, we want to like kind of like, if we have a goal in mind as far as, oh, we want to be able to hit 225 on the bench press for 5 reps, just kind of like stacking it to where our sets are kind of working up to that, to where we can kind of hit that ultimate goal.
Yeah, so we've got the warm up, if you will, and it's like, okay, I'm feeling good, and then bam, I hit my goal, I've attained it. You've attached your dopamine, now move on.
Yeah. Uh,
But that's also going to help drive like coming back the next day or 2 or 3 days from that, and then being able to do it again. Because I think sometimes with exercise, we sometimes overestimate what we want, and it's like we do too much, say Monday, and then it's like Tuesday, now I feel like, and I don't want to do it. So then it's like harder to kind of get motivated to come back and do something different. So if we can create those small wins and attach that, dopamine signal, if you will, it allows us to kind of create that consistency where we're doing something every day.
Yeah, helpful tip, and I kind of sometimes constantly find myself falling out of this. But right from a workout standpoint, like whether it's a workout actually or a goal, write it down and then like just check off the boxes. That way, we get that dopamine hit by completing that exercise, and we kind of just systematically kind of work our way down that list of whatever we're planning for that day.
Are you familiar with do you know who Cal Newport is?
I don't think so.
Okay, so he wrote the book Deep Work. Anyway, so he's kind of so he's a professor at Georgetown, but he's kind of like a productivity specialist, if you will. And so he kind of has this like daily planner notebook, and it's kind of exactly that. So like he just has like an E for exercise, and he checks the box. Like, so he has 5 different things that he does throughout the day. And so it's like, did I meet my exercise requirement today? Yes or no? And so it's really simple. And then he can kind of see, oh, I was really consistent the month of August, but September, kids going back to school, schedules got a little like, I maybe was a little inconsistent. So then you can just easily try to get yourself back on track just because you're tracking it, right?
Yeah. So yeah, morning, kind of just trying to start with some light movement, get some of that early sun, kind of get ourselves activated, and then also start kind of getting some reward feedback by kind of checking off those boxes.
Yeah, I think that the checklist, you can kind of maybe go too far with it, but I think just a simple checklist that yes or no, I attained my goal, I did it today, I think is a good place for a lot of people to start.
Yeah. So yeah, we got this reward system going. Now we're kind of looking to really, get stuff done throughout the day. So we're trying to kind of keep our mood, keep our happiness kind of stable, and then also really kind of settle into that groove, kind of find that flow state where we can get as much accomplished in the day as we can.
So serotonin is, I think, a little bit more towards like the contentment side of things. So you're happy with what you have. You're not striving to necessarily achieve more. So I think at this point, it's like we're just trying to kind of keep the day going, if you will, right?
Yeah. So serotonin, how do we kind of really optimize that? So with serotonin, really kind of from an exercise standpoint, we're kind of looking at more of like your steady state.
Yeah, this would be like a zone 2
Yeah.
type workout.
And our steady state and kind of how that kind of goes in play. So whenever we're kind of in this steady state cardio, this zone 2, we're really kind of working as far as our energy pathways, our oxidative phosphorylation, we're basically kind of more burning more fat for fuel.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And whenever we're burning more fat for fuel, we're mobilizing a lot more fatty acids, and kind of along that comes with that is probably some of you may or may not have heard, like tryptophan. Tryptophan is kind of like a precursor to 5-HTP, which is then gets converted into serotonin.
Right. And so the interesting thing is this directly correlates to UV light. So tryptophan's absorption spectra is right in that UV range. So if you're going to kind of optimize through the light, getting that midday sun, depending on the weather, having as much skin exposed as possible within reason, right, is going to be like your best way to kind of harness those additional benefits.
I think people always thought that like tryptophan was kind of like makes you tired.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it was more like, because I think it came along with like Thanksgiving, eating turkey, because turkey has more tryptophan in it as far as from an amino acid standpoint. But it was really that just more like whenever you eat to excess, like your belly expands, and that's actually what's kind of creating more of that tired signal, and not the actual tryptophan itself.
Yeah, because if you think, one, you eat a lot more typically around Thanksgiving, but a lot of the sides are carbohydrate-rich foods, right? Yeah, you have the turkey, but stuffing and potatoes and all different kinds of breads or whatever. So the increase in carbohydrate intake also boosts serotonin. And so you're going to get this like extra kind of spike through the carbohydrate. And so it's really the increased blood flow to the gut and stomach and the carbohydrate rather than specifically the tryptophan.
Oh yeah, sure. It's that insulin spike you get from it, and then the crash. The crash afterwards. It's actually making you more tired. Anyways, so yeah, zone 2 cardio. Ideally, if we're looking for zone 2, to kind of maximize the benefits, we're kind of looking at that 40 to kind of 60-minute range if we can, to really kind of get.
Yeah, if you can be above 40, 45 minutes, that you need that time we've talked about in another episode to kind of maximize. So yeah, I would say try to strive for that if you can.
Yeah. Also, okay, yeah. So trying to increase serotonin, also now trying to kind of increase those endocannabinoids to kind of really kind of now help us kind of get in that flow state where we're not really even thinking about having to work. We're just kind of in a groove and we're feeling good and we're getting stuff done.
Yeah, so this is a little bit similar to what we saw with the dopamine, a little bit more rhythmic, because like, say you're on a bike, you can kind of get lost in the rhythm, if you will, of cycling. Yes. And so you then, it's interesting because like now your brain can start to attend to some other things. So there's this whole deal about like problem solving in the background. So like just say early morning you were checking some email and like there was a problem and you didn't really have a great solution. Now while you're on your bike, your brain can attend to some of these problems, and it actually can bring out some creativity and allow for um, expansion of thinking to a certain extent, and allow for maybe a solution that you wouldn't have thought of if you would have just been trying to grind it out like in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, and then if we can try to maybe couple it with some more that midday sunlight to kind of get that UV and just kind of bring that more that synergistic effect, and really try to like optimize as much as we can.
Yeah, so again, that UV midday sun is going to be optimal for creating this chemical cascade, if you will.
Yeah. And then, yeah, kind of now as we kind of move into the late afternoon, early evening, we're really trying to kind of maybe reward ourselves and kind of lock in the productivity uh, that we had throughout that day to really kind of set ourselves up to kind of do this whole thing again.
Yeah, so at this point, we're almost starting like the recovery process to a certain extent, and so the amber light or that red or infrared light we know helps with recovery, decreases inflammation. So like we're already kind of starting to kind of move in that direction, and so that's kind of where we're preparing to be able to do this all over again the next day, right?
Yeah, so we're kind of going after how do we optimize for endorphins and then that BDNF. So endorphins, we're typically going to be looking for a little bit more of a vigorous workout, something that's going to be a little bit more stressful and taxing. That way, we get that endorphin response from that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like something that's, like I said, a little bit more intense. We can even throw in some intervals in there if we want to. But yeah, something at least 20 to 30 minutes, moderate to vigorous exercise, to where we definitely kind of get that like runner's high afterwards.
Yeah, so the key with this one is not doing it too late. So I know there's a lot to fit in, but it's like if you do too vigorous activity too late while we're trying to optimize for these hormone profiles, the activity in general potentially could create too much of a stimulating effect, right? So this goes back into our circadian signaling. And so like you wouldn't want too vigorous of a signal too late, because that's going to now promote wakefulness rather than the preparation for the sleep and all those
Yeah,
things.
typically this is still kind of several hours before you're kind of looking to go to bed.
Yeah, if you can 4 hours before you go to bed, that would be ideal, but definitely 2 or 3 would be like you wouldn't want to too close to bedtime, right?
Yeah. And then also for now for your BDNF, yeah, like I said, kind of getting that runner's high. We're kind of looking at more I guess endurance training. Uh, Also something combining maybe some more like skills like martial arts, and then or some kind of combo of like CrossFit. You can do some like sort of like cardio and strength training. We're kind of
Mm-hmm.
looking to kind of get multiple modalities here,
Yep.
uh, but definitely kind of having some sort of skill based in there to where we're kind of it kind of touches into that we're trying to create more like neuroplasticity, so we kind of really need to kind of touch on that that's like that skill based where we're having a little mental obstacles to kind of have to overcome in that workout as well.
Yeah, so this would be where if you were trying to maybe work on a particular technique. So if you're an Olympic lifter and there's a sticking point, it's not necessarily going to be, high weight, but you're really going through the the skill of the movement, and this could be where you're trying to maybe change a flaw that you're trying to address, or it's just say you go to the driving range and you're trying to maybe work on a swing change. This potentially could be where instead of just warming up to go play, this is where you might get out a training aid and really try to work on changing technique.
Yeah. So yes, trying to bring that a little bit more mental aspect into our workout to where we're kind of like challenge ourselves from a more of like a neurological standpoint.
Yeah, and then you could even get into like the whole there's definitely ways of creating like not necessarily an obstacle course, but where you're creating a little bit of that like mental friction. So you would set up like a drill that forces you to kind of change how you're moving or that sort of thing, like a constraint, if you will. So if you're constantly like the bar is moving too far away, you could set yourself up closer to a wall where you had to use a little bit of a different technique. So creating a little bit more of a constraint. If we're talking about cars, or we can do more of a level 2 type car that really confines the movement.
Yeah. Okay, now we kind of move into the evening, and kind of as you mentioned before, now like sun is kind of set. We're really kind of looking to kind of wind down.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to avoid any sort of strenuous activity. That way, our cortisol is dropping off. Because whenever we're working out mobile, like we're working out, we are going to have to mobilize energy, and whenever cortisol levels are high, melatonin can increase. So looking to keep cortisol levels low, looking to keep that blue light low as well, and really just kind of looking to wind down the day to kind of set us up to getting into those good sleep cycles at night.
Yeah, so this should, as far as like activity goes, you might not think of this as activity, but this could be where you might do some breathing exercises, working on maybe not necessarily meditation, but more of that relaxation type thing. You could maybe do light yoga or some sort of low intensity mobility type thing. Again, you're not trying to stimulate, you're trying to create relaxation. If you had access to a sauna, you potentially could do sauna, potentially hot tub, one of those types of things.
Because in this sense seems counterintuitive what you're actually saying, we actually are looking to bring our body temperature down. So whenever we do something like a sauna or a hot bath, our body actually responds in the opposite way. So we're experiencing this heat, so our body's like, hey, we need to cool down. So we end up starting to drop our body temperature.
Yeah, so that's the reason why like cold plunge is best, because again, we see norepinephrine spikes, we see dopamine spikes, so we can see that early morning would be better for cold plunge if you were going to do it for timing wise, and then sauna or some sort of heat modality is probably better later in the day, because we do get that reverse effect as far as body temperature goes.
Yeah. Okay, now let's kind of maybe get into a little bit of maybe more the clinical side. So this is definitely not our area of expertise, but from a movement standpoint, we can definitely aid, because I think a lot of awareness and research is coming out about how well movement and exercise can treat some of these mental health disorders.
Yeah, I mean, there's a paper I was reading actually this morning. It just kind of interesting timing. That exercise, from a research standpoint, is deemed like the number one thing for depression. But it's not prescribed by every mental health professional. Drugs are still kind of the number one thing. And I think the study even listed that as far as like effectiveness, exercise isn't going to cure everything, but exercise has a high percentage. It's like 40 something percent of effect of some drug. So it's like, if you can get the same benefit from not taking a drug or a very high, but like, why wouldn't you want to introduce that into the, I'm not saying that completely eliminating, but like as part of a well-rounded treatment, I think it's going to be you know.
I mean, yeah, like if you look at how our biology developed thousands of years ago, we have these reward mechanisms built in place to that go along with movement, go along with getting stuff done, that goes along with being outside in our environment, getting sunlight and different types of wavelengths throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we didn't need SSRIs or all these other drugs. It's because our body was optimized to kind of be in those conditions. So we kind of need to kind of go back and look at to what it is we were doing thousands of years ago uh, first,
Right.
rather than instantly maybe trying to go to a drug. And not saying there's people with some chemical deficiencies, and like it's definitely you know talk with your physicians, but you, you also got to look at what our bodies were meant to do, and that is move
Yeah.
and move kind of outdoors.
Yeah. So I think you want to talk about this, but I'm going to bring it up now. So I just also saw a research study on there's no ADHD in the Amish community. There was an interview where this person asked, "Hey, do you know what ADHD is?" And this Amish person was like, "What is that?" And so they described it as, obviously attention and inability to focus and all those things. And they're like, "We don't have that. Like it's just unheard of in the Amish community." So they don't have the digital distractions that most people have. They're typically working outside. They're farming, that sort of thing. So interesting how certain cultures don't have the same issues as others.
Yeah. Okay, so let's maybe kind of look at so depression maybe first. Depression's typically going to see decreases in dopamine, decreases in serotonin, your brain-derived neurotropic factor, your BDNF, and then we typically also kind of comes along with this is kind of like a blunted endorphin response. So we're just not able to kind of get those rewards from hard work.
Yeah, typically depression is associated with low dopamine. And so that's the start of the day. So you need to optimize the beginning of the day to minimize the decline. So, you know, that means you might have to get up a little bit earlier. That means you might have to do a light workout before you go to work. And the hardest thing in a depressed person is getting started. But once you get started, you can use that dopamine to start attaching to doing a little bit more. So I think this would be where having a friend to help create that motivation, or have a workout partner or something, to kind of help create that social interaction to allow you to kind of start to break the cycle.
Yeah, I think Jocko talks about this in the book. It's like we want to create these like small wins and just like almost keep the bar really low. Like he starts his day like first day making the bed, just because that's something very easy you can do, and it's you get that check mark. You get that tiny little dopamine spike from just kind of starting your day by completing something.
Yeah, and you can only control what you can control. You can control making your bed. So if you make your bed every morning, at least you've created a little bit of order in your life. And so if you can start to attach, okay, well, I have control over that. What's the next thing that I can kind of create some semblance of control? And so it's just a good way to start the day. And so, if you're struggling with getting motivated, that's one thing that can definitely start to make an impact.
And then also trying to kind of maintain our mood. So definitely trying to work to increase some serotonin levels as well.
Mm-hmm.
And as we mentioned before, kind of trying to get into that zone 2, more of that steady state. So it may be a lot to ask early on to kind of get that 45 minutes, but even to where you're still getting into more aerobic respirations, yeah, you may not be getting the full benefit of trying to improve mitochondria function, but getting into zone 2, I mean, like 20 minutes of just aerobic activity will actually go a long ways as far as increasing serotonin. And if you can kind of combine that with getting some light exposure. Yes, it's going to be optimized middle of the day,
Mm-hmm.
but you're still going to be getting some UV uh, even in the morning.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So I think you would have to check time, but it's like, early morning, the UV is going to be really low. And so it's that first hour where the UV will start. So you're not going to get the UVB to make vitamin D, but you will get some UVA. So that would definitely be important. The other thing that I would say is, again, that brightness. So whenever we see that seasonal affect disorder, which is kind of a form of depression, typically that happens in the wintertime. Typically that's because we're stuck inside, and no matter how bright we think the lights are, it's not as bright as being out in the sun. And so most cloudy days are still brighter than the brightest lights inside. So getting that brighter sun signal, or the brighter light signal, helps to kind of minimize. So I know they make these light panels that allow for you to have, bright light exposure, but if we can do it, outside, this would be where I would recommend taking sun breaks. So if you can kind of throughout the day, it doesn't have to be 2-3 minutes, just to kind of, again, kind of set your clock. Getting outside a few times throughout the day would be beneficial.
I don't know, I think we've all probably experienced where like you get outside and it's a nice bright sunny day, how we kind of get that uplift from just like,
Yeah,
wow, this kind of feels needed and necessary.
yeah, and I think, society, for whatever, like, we've kind of shied away from just sun exposure for, because of supposed negative reasons. But the more we can get, the better. And I think that you can use precaution, especially in the beginning, but you're going to see the benefits the more you're out in the sun. And so, especially if we're talking about uplifting our mood, you know, most people feel better whenever they're out in the sun rather than being in a dimly lit, basement or something.
Yeah, so kind of like some, if you can, 3 to 5 times a week, 20 to 30 minutes. If you can get that 40, plus minutes to really kind of get the benefits of zone two, I mean, by all means. But like I said, we're trying to get dopamines. We're trying to check those boxes. So start small, work to increase that. And then also throwing in some like resistance training, kind of including in that skill based,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's like in a martial arts or maybe like even something like dancing, or just where we're bringing in that skill component. We're kind of now getting that BDNF spike. We're increasing our brain-derived neurotrophic factors, which is going to then really kind of help create that change and create this pattern forming for just more long-term success.
Well, yeah, if you think of, the typical depressed person, they feel like they're stuck, right? And so if you can harness the benefits of being able to create change, like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. All right, moving on to list. Anxiety. So typically with anxiety, we see more kind of hyperactive in that norepinephrine. So we're getting these big spikes. Along with that, we're kind of seeing constantly changing serotonin levels because our mood's constantly changing.
Mm-hmm.
And then also kind of those low endocannabinoids. So we're not really kind of able to kind of get into that flow and kind of stay keeping that steady state from a
Mm-hmm.
mental standpoint. We're kind of like always kind of up and down. Yeah, and it's really kind of just hard to control our emotions.
Yeah, so this is where that more steady state kind of rhythmic, light to moderate is probably going to be important. Um, Definitely breath work would be important as well. We can definitely see some positive benefits by learning how to use the breath to create that slightly more calm state, if you will. And then, the aerobic training, we can use that as kind of like a breath tester, if you will. So, If we're talking about like that zone two steady state type exercise, like we can pair that with like nasal breathing. And so if we can create an intensity where it's just high enough where we're starting to feel a little stressed, but we're able to still nasal breathe and remain relatively calm, um, we can use that type of training to help create a little bit more of this like calming overall state, if you will.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely bringing in that. Yeah, like you said, as we were talking about, like that breathing, movement coordination together really kind of helps uh, increase our serotonin levels, and it kind of just keeps us kind of that even keel.
Yeah. So if we think of like there's a lot of different ways to think about breathing, but if you think of breathing, there's like a gear system, if you will. So nasal only would be considered like gear one. Um, but a lot of times people with anxiety, they start to like breathe through their mouth a little bit more. And so the more we breathe through our mouth, that's going to kind of translate us. Like if we're talking about like energy systems, that's going to be more of that anaerobic state, which is typically with that heightened sense of anxiety because it's a little bit more sympathetic dominant. If we can be closer to nasal, we can be a little bit more parasympathetic, a little bit more of that calming. So if we can learn how to recognize, oh, I'm starting to, huff and puff a little bit more, through my mouth rather than through my nose, we can then use that recognition, start to, use the nasal breathing to kind of bring us back to that sense of calm, if you will.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like getting into that zone two if we can, and kind of focusing on where we can, yeah, stay consistent in our breathing, because as we kind of mentioned before, like zone two is kind of that point where you should be able to kind of be able to have a conversation,
Yep.
uh, just barely, but you shouldn't be able to sing. So it's like you're really not taxing your breathing too much, your respiratory system too much. You're looking to be able to kind of just stay steady in it, and yeah, and like I said, that's going to be good for really mobilizing fatty acids, increasing tryptophan, and then also therefore bringing up our serotonin levels.
Yeah, and I think that whether you're in officially zone two or not, I think in the beginning it's best, like doing something is better than doing nothing. So even if you're not technically in zone two, but you got on your bike and you went for a bike ride, you're going to be better off than not doing it. So I wouldn't get lost in the weeds of, oh, did I actually achieve zone two or not? Or because like if you just went for a walk, that's still going to be better than not doing anything. So I think that especially in the beginning, um, there can be anxiety around, did I do it right? And I think the goal here is not to create more anxiety around, did I optimize my schedule? So I think the take home message really is start somewhere and we can always kind of improve as we go, but don't get lost in the weeds, especially right off the get go.
Because yeah, it'll be a positive feedback loop. So feeling anxious, maybe just start with something as simple as like getting out maybe in the middle of the day whenever we're feeling anxious, and go for a 10-minute walk, get that UV light,
Yeah,
and yeah, start there.
absolutely. I think that's a good.
Okay, so we kind of mentioned before, another big one, especially rings home with me, ADHD. So with this, we kind of see decreased dopamine, decreased norepinephrine, and then also there's arguments that now kind of say whether or not when you're developing early on, you have the ability to kind of produce that BDNF to kind of create that neuroplasticity. So yeah, the biggest thing I know with ADHD is just that lack of motivation, lack of the ability to kind of get moving and get started. So in order to, what we're looking to do is we're kind of looking to optimize the norepinephrine and dopamine.
Right. So
Get that ball rolling.
if we're low dopamine, this is where that early morning sunrise. So that's where we're gonna see the best. So a lot of times, if depression, ADHD, like these people tend to be late risers. Not necessarily, but
I used to be, kind
well,
of.
yeah. So long story short, you're now missing the signal, right? So if you're already low dopamine and you're missing the signal, once you miss the signal, it's difficult to make up for it, right? And so you can do all of our recommendations. You can get out for whatever your quote unquote morning sun would be, but it's not going to be the same frequency as that first early morning sunlight. And so the goal would be you really need to become a morning person. Very difficult to get started that way, but the better you can become a morning person and get that right light signal to begin with, you're going to see this downstream cascade in areas that you might not even realize. So the key is getting started, and that's the hardest thing. So again, having that friend or that workout partner or accountability partner, if you will. Hey, we're gonna go for our early morning walk, or let's go have coffee out on the deck, or something where you're gonna get your day started a little bit earlier, and you're gonna see the results as far as like better ability to focus and kind of lock in on those tasks that you need to later in the day.
Yeah, and then also trying to then also increase your BDNF to kind of really keep progress rolling, to kind of keep you motivated, to kind of really kind of create those changes so that you can maybe become a morning person. You
Mm-hmm,
can
mm-hmm.
stay consistent in your routines. So some stuff that's a little bit more skill based, typically maybe a little bit more later in the day once you've kind of already gotten motivated and activated.
Mm-hmm.
But something where you're kind of mixing in exercise with a little bit of that mental component to really kind of creating those lasting changes.
Yeah, I think that
Team sports is a great one. Uh, like martial arts, I know was a great one for me growing up.
yeah, finding something that requires a little bit of not necessarily outside the box thinking, but where it challenges your ability to problem solve kind of in a different environment.
Yeah, like physical problem solving.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's a good way of saying that. Yeah, so if you're kind of struggling with like ADHD, then yeah, try getting out 10-minute walk early in the morning, uh, like a brisk walk, or try doing just a light 10 to 20 minute quick exercise before you need to kind of complete a task.
Yeah. You could use the like just say you were going to do some jumping jacks and push-ups. That could give you enough of a spike to be able to then kind of lock in and focus in, read the chapter that you're supposed to, or complete the email or whatever. So you can use, and then you could then take like breaks, if you will, and be like, okay, well, in the beginning you might have to do that multiple times
Yeah,
to get through. And so yeah, it might take longer overall to complete the task, but when you are in the moment, you're locked in rather than um, now, this is another thing that Cal Newport talks about is like attentional switching, um, which is a big problem because people think that they're multitaskers, and we don't really multitask. We basically go from one task to the other. And so, you know, he talks about like email and getting notifications. So, if you're working at your computer and then all of a sudden you get this ding, oh, I got a new email. Then you go and check the email. Well, then it takes 5 to 10 minutes to regain your focus to get back into writing the paper or doing whatever you were already doing. So, if you can minimize distractions and just lock in on the task and not be worrying about like excess notifications from different sources, you're going to be better off. So again, that's maybe a little bit of a kind of a side, but it's one of those things that if you can kind of lock in, the better off you're going to be.
yeah. Um, okay, yeah. I think like so whatever it is we're struggling with, getting an understanding of kind of where we're we're deficient from like a neurochemical standpoint,
Hmm.
we can definitely kind of optimize and tailor our workouts to try and help with that. So uh, if you're struggling to get started, I mean, kind of maybe start your day off, start your morning off by getting that kind of like early morning sunlight to kind of get activated and get motivated. We're increasing our norepinephrine, we're increasing our dopamine, and we're kind of really kind of setting the tone for the day.
Yeah, and I think the big takeaway is it doesn't matter what you're struggling with. Getting your day started on the right foot is going to make the rest of the day that much better. So um, it makes the argument that everyone should become a bit more of a morning person, and everyone should be a little bit more focused on getting that light signature that starts the day. So
Yeah, and then then kind of like just kind of read it. So if we're looking kind of maybe more struggling with that kind of like that midday, try getting some steady state cardio, like some more steady state in that zone 2, to where we're kind of optimizing to kind of get into that flow state and kind of develop that system where we can kind of grind out through the day without having these highs and lows.
exactly. So I think that going for a walk, or going for a bike ride, or going for something where you're able to kind of sustain over that close to 40 minutes if you can, hour if you can, but at least 20 minutes if minimal, if you will. So I think that that coupled with that midday sun is going to allow us to kind of set the stage for the rest of the day.
And then kind of finally to kind of cap the day off. And this doesn't have to be like an every day. It's like I have to do some sort of exercise, 3 times a day. That's the one realistic, but like mixing it, throughout the week. But then also trying to kind of, if we're looking to kind of create more change and try to, really kind of like also then help solidify those habits. Like, throwing in some more, maybe a little bit more vigorous exercise later in the day, something with that kind of mental component with it to help give us those endorphins by working out a little bit harder, and also bring in that mental component of the workout to where we get that BDNF increase, to where we're really kind of creating those lasting changes.
And if you think about it, you know, the year has different seasons. Your work schedule might have a different season. So you might need to focus on one area a little bit more than the other. So while there's an optimization for every single component, whatever you struggle with, you can choose that particular modality and focus on that one. And so, you know, just imagine like your work week. If you're going to have more difficult tasks first thing in the week, you can shift your schedule to kind of flow around that. And then later in the week, you can, so your exercise, if you're not training for a particular event, you can optimize your exercise schedule around creating better mental clarity and that sort of thing. So you could actually periodize around these neurochemicals as well.
Yeah. Let's just try, maybe going forward, try to be intentional about trying to get some light exposure kind of early in the day. In the afternoon, kind of maybe get that morning walk, get that UV sunlight to kind of help balance and regulate our mood. And then kind of in the evening, try to avoid those blue lights as much as we can. I know usually a lot of us like to go home and kind of maybe zone out in front of the TV. Sometimes I'm guilty of that too. But like just as much as we can, minimize those signals that are kind of giving those cortisol spikes later in the day, like those blue lights. The better sleep quality you get, and it's just going to carry over into the next day.
Yeah, and this would be where blue light blocking glasses and using some other mitigation strategies. I'm not saying that it allows you to watch TV all night, but if you are going to, if you're going to, read on your iPad or something, you would be better utilizing some of those strategies, if you will, rather than ruining all the good work that you did earlier in the day.
Yeah, most technology nowadays has filters to minimize certain types of wavelengths.
Yeah, exactly. So taking advantage of like the night shift, or where and then even like your lights, like we talked about, like using lower level lights, using more amber lights, or more of that warmer color temperature rather than the bright, um, sharply blue spike, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, so pretty much just kind of looking for, you know, getting outdoors, getting some sunlight, and getting a well balanced workout. Check out your local box. But yeah, anything else you're.
And I think that
Uh,
sums it up. I think nature does it best, so we can't really hack nature, even though we try to. So if you can get outside and get your exercise while being outside rather than being inside, you're going to be better off. And then I think just not trying to get overly complicated with it. So taking it slow. If you're thinking, oh wow, these are a lot of changes, like yeah, it can be, but I think just starting with getting some early morning sunlight is kind of 80% of it, and then you can kind of optimize depending on what you're looking for throughout the rest of the day.
yeah. Yeah, if you find this helpful, please like, subscribe, share. Drop us a comment if you have something that works for you. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Yep. See you soon.
All right, take care, everybody.